So this week we are doing the continuation of the Maimer Lebabtini Kala, and which starts on Daf Chavches Amid Daled, and we're going to go through Daf Chavtes. And so, in the beginning of the Maimer, he started speaking about the union of Karbanis and Lechem, difference of Ratzin and Chafetz. Now, Oifen Ois Beis, second, again, Chavches Amid Daled. He said, that we know that there's two types of ways that light and life force from the and Suf comes down into the world and to all creations. There's level of Malaklam, there's level of Sevklam. Malaklam is the way that it encloses and it evolves level after level. In other words, first into the worlds of the 10 spheres, and afterward into the Neshamas and then the Malachim, which they are spiritual. And then it comes down into the physical things also, that the life force gets drawn into each world according to what it is. And from there it gets many divisions of levels, without limit, and worlds to no limit, which is each one different and more great. In other words, different in size, different in ways. But the level of Seiv Kalamin is the level of the Chai. This is all Malaklam, but the level of Seiv Kalamin is that where the life force and the light, which gives life to the worlds and all creations, it doesn't come in a way. In other words, it gives life to all the worlds and all creation, but it doesn't come in a way that it encloses and involves levels, only rather it surrounds and, so to speak, encompasses them all. And this is called the encompassing light. In other words, it's a light and life force, but it is in a way of makif. Makif meaning surrounding, encompassing, and encompass all of them equally. The supernal ones, the lower ones, without any divisions of levels, because I am Hashem who doesn't change, and he equalizes the big and the small, and the physical and the spiritual are equal before him, and like dark is light before him. And from there, it gets drawn down what the Chacham says, that you shouldn't take lightly the blessing of a simple person, because it comes from the level of Seiv Kalamin. In other words, from there, even a simple person is able to draw down, because we're all equal. And so the level of Seiv Kalamin now is hidden. It doesn't come in a revealed way. Only when Mashiach will come, which then will be that we will see eye to eye. But now, it's Hayom La'asosam, the day to make it happen, which means we draw down this revelation that will happen in the world to come will be revealed, as is known. And how do we do this? We do this through nullifying one's desire and Shema. When we say the word Echad, when you take to heart how the Eibishter is one and there's nothing other than him, as we've spoken about earlier, which through that you have a total thirst. Your soul goes out to cleave to Hashem in the light of the Ein Sof, and you have no other desire other than the Eibishter and for him. And then you ascend and you become infused within into the light and the Ein Sof of Sovev, which is higher than even being able to be enclosed within the realm of the world, in a way of regularly evolved world. So you go to beyond, through, in other words, beyond the normal evolved worlds, that you have nothing, no desire other than Hashem himself, and that's where to it is. And then from there, we draw it back down into this world. When? Not the Krishma is when we go up and we ascend to that level. And we get to earth to go back to that level. And then from there we arouse a new hamshacha down, which is when we draw down the light of the Ein Sof in the davening of Shemona Esrei, and we say Baruch Ata, blessed are you. Which Baruch means to draw down, to bless. And we draw down the Ein Sof, and the meaning of the word Baruch has two meanings. One is it says that the king Shlem is blessed, when meaning that he receives the bracha, which comes from a higher place. And the second one is we say Rachum v'chanon, which there is not that you're being blessed. It's not a verb. It's rather just this is the source of rachamim. That we say God is the source of rachamim. Same way He is Baruch. He is the source of bracha, and that's the same way when we say Baruch Atah. It has both meanings in it, and both are true. That through the arousal that we make down here, that the light of the Ein Sof is in the skala, it becomes infused into the light of the Ein Sof. In other words, the chayes of ourselves down here get infused into the Ein Sof Baruch Hu. We draw down bracha from where? From the source of our bracha, which is the Ein Sof Seiv Kalamin, Mamish. And how do we bring it down into the level of Ata, the next word, which is Aleph Taf Hey, which is the letters of the Torah from Aleph to Taf, and plus the Hey, which is the 5 ways that the mouth makes letters and words, and that is the idea of drawing down Sovev into the level of Mamala, that also in the world of Mamala, the filling light of God, there should always also be the revelation from Sovev. And that's the idea of the Exodus of Mitzrayim, which is, Mitzrayim is level Mamala Kalamin. The light that fills the world, which is a way that it's evolved worlds and many levels, and many different levels, and each one has its own limit and its own boundaries. But the drawing down the revelation of Sof Kalam is called going out of Egypt, which that's the bringing down of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu itself, as its name is, that it has no end, without limit. And when the person draws on himself this revelation, it's as if he's going out of Mitzrayim, his own limitations. And that's the idea of 2 times that we see, Ani Hashem Elokeichem, I'm the Lord your God, that took you out of the land of Egypt. And then he says, again, I am Hashem, I'm the Lord your God. Ani Hashem Elokeichem, that, what does Havaya Elokeichem mean? Hashem, your God. That is the revelation of Soviv until it becomes the level of Havaya becomes Elikim, which means Elikim is power. It means Lord. It also can mean, it also can be in plural. So Havaya is creator, beyond. To draw it down into Elikechem or Elikim, that's already drawing down one level. And he says there's 2 levels in this, therefore he says it twice. The first one is the drawing down of Sof Kalam itself. And then there is the revelation of it in Mamalu Kalam. And therefore it's twice, Havaya Elokeinu, Havaya Echad. The first one, Hashem is Elokeinu, that's the level of drawing down Sof Kalam itself. And he says in the bracket, this is the idea of Yichud of Abba ve'ema of Chachma and Bina, unification, which is revelation, comes from the revelation of the Sof Kalam itself. Which is before it gets into the level of a Maluk Kalamin. Because Abba ve'ema, which is called the hidden things to Hashem Elokeinu, the hidden worlds. And also Chachma is higher than any recognized or known intellect, as explained in other places. And the idea of the intellect of Abba, which is Chachma, and then Bina, which is also a surrounding light, it's also a makif, as we said, a all-encompassing light. And it's also completely unified with the Chachma. And so that's one level. Then there's a second level when you draw down Sof Kalam, when it comes revealed into a Malach Kalamin, that's already called the unification of Zal Malchus, which is the Midas with Malchus. And these 2 things are also we have in hidden to in the word Baruch. As you said before, that there's a level of Baruch, the source, and the level of Baruch as it comes down and you draw down bracha. Okay, then he says, this is also the meaning of what it says, Kadosh Baruch Hu. That Kaddish goes in the level of Sof Kalam in itself. And then Baruch is the way, it's the source of all bracha, that's the way it's come down in the level of Alma Diskasya. And also Baruch is the way it comes down in Malach Kalamin in the level of Ata. And we could say these are the 2 levels of Das Elyon and Das Tachten, which is explained somewhere else. The Das Elyon is what connects Chachma and Bina. Tachten is what draws down from Chachma and Bina into the Midas. And look also in other Mamarim about this. And then we have the second level, which is Havaya Echad, which is when the revelation of before he says Hashem Elokeinu, now he continues Hashem Echad, is when this revelation comes down at the level of Amala, which that is, these 2 levels, both of them are in Yichud Ilah. Both of them are in this higher level of unification of Atzilus, the unification of Chachma and Bina, and then, or at least Soviv being revealed, so to speak, and then being drawn down into Mamala, which is a Zah into Malchus. And then we have afterwards Barshim, which that's the level of Yichud Torah, which is the unification with the lower worlds. And that's what we say that the tefillas, the davening was made, instituted in connection with the karbanis. That just as the sacrifices are a level of bread, the same way it says on Krishma that I ate my honeycomb with my honey. In other words, it becomes this is an Abisha saying, so to speak, that he's eating. There becomes this eating, so to speak, above, which that is a level of nullification and the infusion of the soul within the light of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu Sof Kalamin, which that draws down a new revelation from the Ein Sof into level of Maluk Kalamin. This is called bread. And as we spoke about in previous Mamarim, or that the idea of bread is the idea, and he'll say it further, it's the idea of drawing down that the soul is connected with the body. And this happens through bread. So now he says, the Chacham said that the world stands on 3 things. So till now we extend Torah and Avodah and Gemis Chasadim. So Avodah, which we said is of the service, which is the karbanis, the sacrifices, and connected to them is davening. That's what we explained till now. But the explanation of the idea of Torah, so by Torah it says, this is the Torah Adam, that is a level of man. Which, what is the level of man? It says that on the form of the throne of God's chariot, there's a form in the form of man. Which, what does that mean in the form of man? That there's 248 limbs, which connect to the 248 positive commandments, which connect with the 248 positive commandments. And just as the limbs are vessels to and the place where you draw down the spiritual life force from the soul to get spread out to every single limb according to its own specific way. The same with the mitzvahs, they are the vessels in the place where the Ein Sof rests which the Sefer, in other words, and enclose itself within all the different parts of the world in these limited and broken down places, into every single mitzvah according to its level. And so all this that we draw down is from the level of Sefer, which is the idea of nullification to the light of the Ein Sof, that in other words, a nullification within the Ein Sof, which all the things of Torah mitzvahs, which they're all in physical things. There, in other words, we have Zroy and Mayid, the things that are planted, the Yom Tovim, which are also physical. We have the different gifts to the poor, Trumas, Maestras, Karbanis. These are all things that are under the domain of the Klipa, of Noiga. And what is the purpose? To draw down into it the light of the Ein Sof, that that the self, the ego of this Klipa should become nullified and become infused in one within the light of Hashem and its holiness. On the other hand, the mitzvahs loisasa, which we weren't speaking about because we were spoken about the Ramach mitzvah sase, but here he says that the 365 negative commandments, they're meant to separate the good from the bad. And therefore, because of this concept, Torah is called bread. As it says, that just like bread, on this man lives, that even though his main life force is really from his soul, and the bread is only the cause that causes there should be a sustaining, that the soul shouldn't leave the body. In other words, it only connects between the soul, the life of the soul and the body, because it says that the bread sustains the heart of man. Yet, the drawing down of the nefesh and its connection with the body happens specifically for this cause. It's caused by this bread, because the bread is the thing that accomplishes this, because it draws down this life force. On the other hand, other types of food and drink, they're types of pleasures, but the main thing that brings life force is bread. The same with the Torah mitzvahs, they're the thing that they cause this drawing down of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu HaSovev, which is beyond all the midas, and it should be drawn down. He's called the master of the world, higher than the world, that it should come down and enclose itself within the worlds, that it should be, he is wise, etc. This is through Torah, and as we added here now, the mitzvahs that are mach evarim. And I just believe that this is a little bit why he's saying Torah v'avoid never really explains in the Maimer more Gemilas Chasadim, but this idea that has to be drawn down into the world, this is the idea of Gemilas Chasadim in this here related to Torah. So through Torah we draw down the light of the Ein Sof within the level of Chachma, and the mitzvahs in general, which is a level of tzedakah and kindness. Through that it gets drawn down the Ein Sof into kindness itself. In other words, not just in the level of Chachma, wisdom beyond, but actual into the midas as well, as we know that the whole idea from the idea of that the world was created through kindness, or that kindness has to be built in order to create the world, that we have to draw down the Ein Sof into kindness as well. And that happens through the mitzvahs. In other words, in order to be that the God should be revealed within and drawn down into the midas of to you is the greatness and the strength, etc. This is all dependent on what we arouse from below, as we say, Asher Kedishanu b'mitzvaysav. That we through the mitzvahs is what the Asher Kedishanu happens. And that's where it says is Karbani Lachmi Liisha, and it goes back here to the Karbanis, that it says the Karbanis that they are like a bread, that this level of bread is a nullification of the self to the ayin, to draw down a revelation of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu down here through the carbon, which we said before is this idea of a great smell, and the also from the term of Chassan, to be drawn down into this world. And through the davening, which is connected with Karbanis, we have this idea that the Eibishter could eat, as it says, he eats his honeycomb with the honey. But in this bread itself, there has to be a condition, which that is li'ishai, which is the idea to my fire. In other words, it's got to be with a love of the soul and Shema to elevate the Nefesh Bahamis to become totally one of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu, and every level of Rish Be'esh, of flames of fire, is only because of the ascension of the Nefesh Bahamis and its transformation, that it goes up in the flames in the way of being burnt up, or into the level of angels that are called the Srafim, but it's burnt up, it gets burnt up, you burn the fuel of the body to be able to bring out this light that's in the flame of the soul. And this is what it says at the Chayas, that the animals, or here called the angels, they ascend, they lift up this throne, and they also they tremble from the fear of the throne. And it says in Datan Velio that the Malach, he only says Kaddish, Kaddish, Kaddish. He says it only 3 times every day. Why? Because when he says it one time, he becomes so nullified in his existence that his soul doesn't come back to him for another 4 hours. And therefore the second time, there comes out, he could, in over a 12-hour day, he could only say it 3 times. But the strength and the power of the elevation of the soul of a Jew is even greater than that of angels. Because the angels, they just ascend, they lift up the throne, and which on the throne is this form of man. But it doesn't get drawn down, and it doesn't come down into the level of man that's on the kisei until it gets revealed the level of b'chol moedecha, all your might, which Adam, the word ma'od is the same level of Adam, is the same level, the same letters. And that is the idea with all your might, everyone according to his level, and that he knows. And he is above, higher than his ability to handle. That's called his ma'od. Each soul, according to his level, is able to draw down a life force from the level of Adam that's above that's on the throne, which is even higher. The angels could reach there, but they can uplift it, but they can't draw down. The neshamas are going to draw down from there. And that's the idea of aleph dam, which the blood, here dam means blood, which that is the life force which comes down from the level of Adam, in other words, from the level of Soiviv to the level of Mamala, to fill up and give life to all the world. And so look at what the idea of Aleph on the pasuk of Moshe, and this is all happens through the Kohen who brings the Karban, which is the level of Aaron, who is the son, he's the father of all the Kohanim, which upon him it says, V'nachnu ma, what are we? Which is a level of Moshe and Aaron, which are totally nullified in the light of the Aaron Sub Baruch Hu, in a unification of supernal unification, also lower unification. They're one within, they're totally nullified, which through this you draw down the light of the Aaron Sub from above to below, and that's also into the levels of your wise, and which is the level of Chachma, as we said before, that happens through Torah, and also into the level of the Chasham, Agdula, Vagvura, which we said is the level of Midas, that happens through mitzvahs, and through that, you accomplish the transformation of the nefesh Bahamas and all of its powers, that you're able to fulfill, that you love Hashem with both of your evil inclinations, that you should have two hearts to Hashem. The first one is to a love and to a cleaving of your soul, only to cleave to Hashem. And the second power is to have the strength to overcome your evil inclination and to break it and to transform it and all the evil. And these are the two levels that it says that there's joy on one side of the heart, and on the other side of the heart there's crying. In other words, level of crying, that's the bitterness on the distance that your soul has come down from its great lofty level, and that from the level of Yisrael al-Machshava, that you came from the thought of Hashem, and you came down into this physical body, which is very far from the Ein Sof, and there's, so to speak, a wall that separates it. You become one that sees yourself as being independent, etc. But on the other hand, there's a great joy that specifically down here in these physical things is where we draw down, and it comes enclosed within it the light of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu and your Torah mitzvahs, which are specifically in physical things, in trumas and straka. And then for this, you should have the greatest joy for Hashem that is in dwelling within your Torah and your mitzvahs. And that's what says Esav in a plural way, that this refers, what's the plural? All the mitzvahs, that they are in physical things, which they are in the level of the Reshus Rabim, in the multiple domain, the separate mountains, the place, that's where the Torah mitzvahs gets drawn down to, that's where the greatest simcha is. So this is what it says, lebabtani, that the Eibusha says to the Jewish people, you made me a heart. In other words, you are causing that I have a heart. And what's the idea? That the heart is a place where the blood, we just said before, the blood is where the soul is. And so the heart is that place in the physical body where the blood is, which is the soul. And it's the life force of the entire body, because the food gets eaten up and it gets digested. And from there it gets made into blood. And the liver takes a lot of the blood, and he takes the best of it and he sends it to the heart. And the heart then sends it out to all areas of the body. And the same way it is, so to speak, above. That through the bread, the Eibishter has this level of heart. In other words, he draws down the light of the Ein Sof, which is Soiviv, into the level of a Malakalamin, and it's Leftini, that there's these two hearts. In other words, these are two types of drawing down of life force. The first one into Antu Chakim, that we said before, happens through Torah. And then the second one, the Chasham Agdula Agvura, happens through mitzvahs into the Midas. And this happens through Torah mitzvahs, which they are the levels of bread. As we said, through the arousal below, we cause the arousal from below, above. And that's what it says, that it was established in Yaakov, and Torah was placed by the Jewish people. And he says also, the man makes it. These psukim, the Alter Rebbe is bringing down to show that how does the lechem happen? How does this bread happen? And this sustenance happens specifically through the arousal and the work of us down here. That the person, he's the one who makes the Torah mitzvahs in a way of bread through, and that's why he brings two psukim. Yaakov is referring to that we make Torah, and the next one, that we make mitzvahs. In other words, but this happens. How do we make this happen? It's through the nullification of ourself, and on this it says, one who does not Asher lo yakim, the one who doesn't fulfill the words of Torah. But the word is yakim because we either create it or we don't. And through this, we draw down the life force in the light of the Ein Sof. And they're drawing down to the level of heart. And these are two levels of hamshacha, two things that we draw down, and the two extremes of chesed ugvura, kindness and severity, water and fire, into the two sides of the heart, in the right side and the left side. But what ultimately draws, what gives us the ability that we're able to draw this down, is where it says achosi kala. In other words, these two levels of achosi, my sister, and level of kala, my bride. Achosi comes from the word of Alexandria, which is to sew up in a way of that they did in the country of Alexandria, which is to the brotherly love that is totally. This is a type of resewing of a stitch that brings the two things together permanently, and this is a permanent connection in your soul as you were born. Only that is one that is hidden, and therefore you have to reveal it from its concealment. That's the level of achosi. Then there's a level of kala, which is the thirst of the soul, which is a flame of fire, which is love, because of your thinking in your heart, understanding of your heart. And these really are the two levels of machshava, dibur, thought and speech, which is machshava is the hidden world, and then speech is the revealed world. Because the level of the hidden love, the natural love, it comes from the hidden world. On the other hand, on the other hand, the revealed love, that happens through the level of dibur, etc. And this is what these are two lovers that never separate, are this higher level of alma diskasya. And then there's level of kala, which is the revealed world, which is the thirst to God. And look at these two levels, as it says in Shir Hashirim. So now the Alter Rebbe continues that that you made me a heart with one of your eyes. What does it mean with one of your eyes? So we said it ba'achad in the masculine, and then we read it ba'achas in the feminine. So he says the idea is that the idea of the eyes is the eyes of the congregation refer to the chachamim, and the idea of wisdom is this level of gazing upon the beauty of the king and his glory, as it says that there's the eyes of the doves, like a couple of doves, that they look at each other at the whole time. And they have a pleasure, and they have a greater pleasure from looking at each other. And the same way there's a way of avodah for the chachamim, which they are the eyes of the congregation, that they walk before Hashem, that they are constantly looking at the beauty of the king, of the Eibishter, and they see his beauty in everything, of the one who created all things, that they should always be, or to see the world always at a nullified place to Hashem. And there's two levels in this. The first one is Yichudei, a supernal unity, that you see how the Eibishter is one, and everything is just part of him. And if so, you yourself are always nullified to the light of the Ein Sof. There's nothing other than him. You're just part of him. There's nothing else other than him. And the second level is the level of Likkutei Torah, which is which there you see the Eibishter as the king of the world. In other words, there's a world with a life force, and it has a feeling of self, and you see God as the king of the world. And this is the idea of the nullification of the self to the ayin, to the Eibishter. In other words, that you yourself are something, and yet you nullify yourself. And this is the reason why everything was created, something from nothing, so that we could be able to nullify this something back to the nothing. And these two levels are what we said by achad, and we call it achas. Because echad, which is the masculine, that's the level of the supernal unity, which there the nullification is in a way of totally one, that nothing other than Hashem. And that's what it says Avram was echad. And on the other hand, there's achas, which is the lower level of unity, which is that you're something, but only that you should be nullified. And as it says, achas is a term of feminine, which is a receiver. You receive from the level of echad. And the main reason, the main idea of this pasuk is through this idea of the eyes, that you're looking into the glory of Hashem, whether it is in the level of echad, which is yichudei lo, whether through the level of achas, which is yichudei tata. You get through that you make a heart for Hashem, and you're able to draw down this level of heart, which we said before is a level from where the blood and the life force of Ein Sof, which is soiviv, comes down into mamala and spreads throughout the entire physical world and everything, every part of the world. We should draw down the light of the Ein Sof, which is mamala kalam and soiv kalam, into this world. And then he continues and says, this is a continuation of the pasuk. One of the pieces of your necklace, of your So an anak, what is this? This is a type of jewelry of precious stones and have and diamonds that have a hole in it, and they're hung on a string, and you go and put it on the neck. Which in these and precious stones and diamonds, they are all from inanimate objects, but they're beautiful and they're nice, and it's very beautiful to wear them. and to beautify yourself with it. The same way, the letters of Torah, they're called stones. As it says in Sefer Yetzirah, the two stones, they build two houses. And they shine from the light of the Ein Sof that comes from the Sof Kalam, which is higher than all the levels of the world. And it comes specifically where do we say before? In the Trumas, in the Maasros, in the physical things. That's where it shines, in the physical world of these stones, the words of Torah. And that's what it says at the beginning is established in the end specifically. So they all have a hole. What does the hole refer to? And through that hole you have a string, which this is the voice of Yaakov, which voice is the idea of drawing down, and that's why it's called tzavarech becharuzim. As we said, your necklace is covered in your neck is covered in the necklaces. Which what is charuzim? So the Gemara brings down that the different Tanoim, when they were learning and changing from learning Mikra to Mishnah, or it says Mikra to Nevi'im, there was a ring of fire around them. So he calls it Chruz mi Mikra Mishnah. They were singing a song from Mikra to Mishnah. And look what it says in there, Navu l'chayacha b'Torah. And therefore it's called an anak. And it's a beautiful, like a necklace, a jewelry that one beautifies and enjoys and becomes and pleasures with. Why? Because of the light of the Ein Sof of Sev Kalam, which is so exalted, and it dwells within these stones. And why even one stone? That means even if one only learns one chapter, one halacha, you make through this heart, which is the revelation of the chayis, as we said before, and that's what the Rabbi said, that even a person learns one perek echad in the morning and one perek echad at night. If you're a business person, that's okay. Which you understand, why did it say perek echad, one perek? You should have said in the morning one, and then in the evening another one. Why did it say perek echad and perek echad? Only means that this perek echad, the one that you're learning, you have to draw down through at the level of echad, which is the light of the Ein Sof mamish. And this is what it says. Anybody who learns halachas every day, he's guaranteed that he's a man of the olam haba. And it says halichos olam loy. You shouldn't see halichos, ela halachos. That the word halachos means that you'll go and you'll walk in the world to come. That the halachas, they are the drawing down, they're the halicha, they're the thing that draws down the Ein Sof of Sev Kalam from one world to the next world, and that's halichas olam loy, that you bring it down into the world, that they're halichas shaloi ba olam, they're your walkings in the world, and therefore it says that you're for sure guaranteed to be a world man of the world to come. That means that you're being born and you're drawing down from the level of olam haba, this hidden world, which there is God's beauty and God's the level of Sovev, and you draw it down into the world, and therefore it's yours. Only now it's on a hidden way. We just plant it, like it says, the light is planted for the tzaddik, for the world to come. But Mashiach will come, then it will grow. And that's what it says in the world to come, that the tzaddikim will say before them Kaddish. That the level before we said Kaddish Baruch, we said Kaddish is this level that's beyond Baruch. That there'll be this revelation of the light of their Ein Sof down here in this world, and then it'll be fulfilled the pasuk. There'll be new heaven and there'll be a new heaven and new earth that I will make for you. That it won't be like the physical world now that they conceal ungodliness, but rather it'll be that the Sev Kalam Tushasai, it'll be a new heaven, that the light of the of Shem of Sev Kalam will be revealed down here. And the kitzur is that these Jewish people, they sustain, as it says, karbani lachmi, it's like a bread, and that's what it's through the karban that the animal soul goes up to its source, which is the face of the ox, and through that the angels, they pick up the throne of Hashem with the, so to speak, man above it, and there becomes the ascension and the elevation to the highest of levels, which through that there becomes a nichreach nichayach Hashem, a good smell. But he says that means nachay's darga, to descend, and drawn down, that's the eating of bread. And now the idea of davening is instead of the karbanis, which that is how we elevate the nefesh Bahamas through the thinking in Shema and its blessings and emes v'yatziv, as we say v'chaviv and nachmad, as we said that I want nothing other than you, which is level of chayfetz, as we said before. And then there's the necheach la'Hashem, the drawing down, which is two levels, Sev Kalam Malakalam. And we do it today in our world, we draw down Sev Kalam, that it should be when the world to come, that eye to eye we will see. And that is through that which we ascend and we nullify our desire, that the chayas should go up into the Sev Kalam. And through that we draw down, and there's in this two levels, which are the two names of Hashem, which in the first pasuk of Shema, Hashem Elokeinu and Hashem Echad, which is level of Sev Kalam, and the drawing down then afterwards from Sev Kalam into a Malakam, which is the Necheach LaHashem, the Nechay's Daga, the coming down, and that happens through the saying the brachas of Baruch Atah Hashem Eshmona Esrei, which we draw down from the source of all bracha, which is an essentially blessed, and then we bring it down into level of Ata, which is Es Karbani, and the eating of the bread, and we said Es, the letters of Torah, but the Chacham said that the Torah, the world stands on three things, the Torah Chasadim, So avodah is what we said, the karbanis, but Torah, it says this is the Torah of man, which is the 248 mitzvahs, the 248 limbs, and the drawing down of Soiv Klamen in this level of Kimara Adam. So this is a second level, as he says here, Kimara Adam. And he says, look in the Ma'amar Zachav Shamar, that you draw down Kiloi Adam into the level of Adam. That's one level. And then you could look another one where it says that Adam is be'etzem arachampin and Kamara Adam is Zah, which are these two levels that he's speaking about. And that's what we that's what's called bread. And look what it says about this mimer in Vaya Atzli Amen and the idea of Meshusechem Tevil Lechem. So he says there's one question before we said karbanis are called bread, and then we said Torah is called bread. So he said that the karbanis is the actual fire of the carbon itself. On the other hand, Torah, or the element of fire, which is in the carbon itself, the Torah is called the bread because we know that there's also the flour and the oil and different things. And this is the drawing down of the Ein Sof b'chachma and chesed, we said before, but the lechem has to be at lechem ishai with a flame of fire, which is the idea of your full might, ma'odes yis adam, and then we draw down aleph dam, which is all through the koyin, which is nachnuma, and that it brings about the idea of a cholavavcha with all our heart, which is the crying and the joy, which happens as we explained in the mimer. And with that we finish the mimer. We'll do the beer next week.